Thank you. First of all, I want to thank you for the invitation. I'm sorry I can't see you face to face, but that seems to be a thing of the past at the moment. I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen if I can. And we'll go through the presentation if that's all right. So I gave quite a lot of thought about the title for this forum, and I thought it was something that is often missed is the cow on dairy units and the profitability of that cow. But just before we start on that, I want to just give a little bit of background about myself. I would think the majority of you do not know me, but I actually started dairy farming like a lot of you when I was at school doing part-time, but then I did 10 years full-time on the farm. And I still have an interest in the farm. I'm still a partner there, but I joined the Breed Society in 1995. Best job in the world. I was in charge of it was YMA now, but now is HYB. And then I went on to be events manager. And fundamentally in 2002, we bought Scottish Livestock Services, which was the milk recording arm of the Scottish Milk Board. And in 2002, when we purchased it, it was making a loss of 630,000. Prior to that, it had been in a profit, but 10 years earlier. Really pleased that actually last year it made a 1.1 million profit. We opened a laboratory down the road from you guys in Telford, and we invested heavily into that lab because we placed a lot of automation in it, and it is still the only one in the UK that's totally automated. We've increased market share from 2002 from 12% to 48%, and you'll note it's in brackets there, 2017. The reason for that is that our competitors no longer publish their amount of cattle recorded with ICAR, and I don't know why. I can only guess. My hobby is UK Dairy Day, and it really is a hobby. Everybody that works on UK Dairy Day, it's not their day job, and we're very proud of it as a team. Hopefully the majority of you have been, and if you haven't, really try and come. But we're now getting 350 trade stands, at least 180 cattle and 9,000 visitors in 2019. Very sad that we had to cancel it this year. I just wanted to talk about the finances of our group a little bit. I became CEO of the Holstein Group in February 2018. This was following the trustees not being happy with the amount of financial loss the group was making in the year. In fact, in 2017, it lost over 750,000. And we've made progress over the years, just going down to 2019, where the group now makes £600,000 profit. This year up to Q3, we've made 814,000 profit, and we're forecast to make 1.1. However, our spending is about 200,000 less on events. Dairy Day is cost neutral, but our other events such as the calf show, attending things like the Royal Welsh and that kind of thing, is what we do as a breed society to meet our charitable objectives. So I think more sensibly, if we hadn't been in COVID, we'd have been forecast about 900K at the end of the year. Now, how we did it. So first of all, we had a strategy, which we hadn't had prior to 2018. Where did we want to be in 5 years' time? And we asked our members of Holstein UK and our customers of CIS what they wanted from us. We then put that in a plan and we stuck to it. We haven't moved off it at all. We got transparency in our finance, which sounds a strange thing to say, but we knew we were spending the money, but we weren't sure what on. So we've spent a lot of time getting complete transparency. even myself actually keeps a log on how much time I spend with each company, and then that's charged against the relevant company, so we know what's making money and what isn't. Surprisingly, no one had ever asked our employees what they thought, and that was a fantastic experience and really engaged the staff, and they really bought into it. I was horrified to find out that 70% of our staff had never been to a dairy farm, which I still can't get over, but that's different now. Every single person apart for their induction goes to a dairy farm and looks what's happening. And the other thing is we've invested quite heavily in training programs, very simple stuff from Excel training, Microsoft training, just to make their job a little bit easier. We had a ridiculous amount of wastage, paper, if nothing else. So we went through every element, excuse me. We also introduced a 3-year 3-quote protocol. We'd had suppliers that had supplied us forever, and some of them still do. But everything we have, every supplier now, if they come to the end of the 3 years, we get 3 quotes to make sure that we're still getting the best service for the best price. It's not always the cheapest quote, I hasten to ask. We've actually increased the staff, but reduced our salaries by 160,000 a year. And that's basically because the company knew it had problems before. So basically they went and employed someone that was very expensive to come and sort it out, and it just didn't work. We also combined the buying power of the 3 companies to try and get the best deals we could. We invested to bring costs down. So what we didn't do is just stop spending money. In fact, we spent a lot more money than we had in the past. We spent a lot of money on IT, and we also brought in protocols. So it wasn't a case only one member of staff ever did anything. We basically did dummy Bibles so people could follow it. And if someone went off ill, someone else could pick it up. We increased income from out of our companies. We white label a lot of our services, BVD, genomics. You may go to companies, go and buy things and not realise that actually we're the people that are supplying it. And also we've added benefits to our services, things like type classification. There's a lot of services you can have free of charge afterwards once you've type classified. So we actually spent money to bring the cost down, and it worked. The reason I've gone through this is I think it can be the same principle on a dairy farm, and we'll just have a little look about that in a second. So the presentation, if my computer will ever move on, thank you. I want to talk about milk price. Milk price is often blamed for the reason that a farm's not making money. What is the right cow? What is the ideal cow? Looking at weaknesses, and I possibly should have strengths in there as well, and the tools to help, and then finishing off on key messages. So milk price, this is actually out of the Daily Mail, I think. You know, that farmers are getting a desperate milk price, margin's not big enough. It's something I would agree with, but is it the key to profit? Well, just looking at the milk price trends here, this is from the Office for National Statistics. If you look at the last 40 years, retail milk price in 1978 was 23 pence and farm gate price was 13 pence. And then you can see how by 2018, it was 78 and 29. So you can see that those two lines on the graph have just widened a little bit. Just to put a bit more detail on that, if you look at this, basically in 1978, there was 45% difference between the retail and farm gate. And that's gone up to 62% over here. And it has been as high as 68% in 1998. If it had stayed at the 45%, which it had done for for years before that, milk price now would be 43p if we were benchmarking it against the retail price. So that's just the first thing to bear in mind. Another way of looking at it is £1 in 1978 is equivalent to £6.28 today, just because of inflation. So what I did just for fun is looked at those prices just to see what that means. It actually means that a farmer was getting 77 pence a litre in today's prices in 1978. And that's quite a sobering thought, that it's more than double that they get now. So I think the first takeaway message is if everybody was getting 77p a litre, 100% of UK dairy farmers would be in profit. That doesn't mean you can't get profit. So this is from AHDB, top 25% averaging a 1.7p margin, middle 50% is 3.4. I've put a quote at the bottom there, and I think it shows. Averages are a funny thing. All we know is a farm in the middle of the top 25% is making a 1.7p margin, and a farm in the middle of the 50% is on minus 3.4. So there's a massive difference in between, but let's just look at those two farms, the two farms in the middle of the top and the middle of the middle. So basically the litres they produce, the middle are 350 litres less. Milk sales therefore, per cow this is, by the way, milk income then is £166 less. The variable cost for the middleman is £62 more, which I thought was an interesting figure. But the big headliner there for me was the overhead costs. The overhead costs were £206 more per cow. So therefore the margin was £434 difference between the middle of the top and the middle of the middle. In fairness, their milk price is nearly a penny. That was very bad math, but 3/4 of a penny difference. So if we look at the whole herd on that current milk price here, your middleman in the top is making, let's round it to 40 grand, and your man in the middle is out of pocket 70 grand. Massive 108,000 difference. If they were on 30p milk price, your middle of the top, 28, your middle is losing 65. In fact, to get that middle of the middleman to break even, the milk price would need to be 33.1 pence, to be precise. However, look what that's done to the guy here. He's making nearly 100,000. Those costs include all labour, everything, but it's those overhead costs that you really got to make your cows work for you. So in my opinion, the business is the difference between profit and loss, not just milk price. Milk price helps, but it isn't the difference. So first of all, what you've got to look at is your system, and AHDB Dairy have got 11 points here for you to have a look at and to consider and decide what's right for your business. The one I'm going to talk about is cow type. Number 9, select the right genetics for traits that reflect the need of your calving pattern, feeding system, milk quantity and quality desired, i.e. what does it say in your milk contract. So what do you want from a cow? Not to state the obvious, you want it to produce a high output of milk, but also to get an income from its meat as well. Let's face it, every animal, or the majority of animals, go into the food chain. They need to get in calf, simple as that. You need good health, because otherwise your vet bills and all of the associated problems are going to be massive costs. Longevity, I think, will get more and more important, and I'll go on to that in a second. They need to be able to eat adequate quantity of food. You've got to have that, otherwise you start getting negative energy, you start to have animals that are not able to get to the feed fence and so on. We all like an easy life, so you want animals that don't give you a hard time. And you need confirmation to achieve all of those to produce a net margin. So fundamentally, you need a cow that's got good production, type, health, and management traits, full stop, to get all of that. Longevity, I just wanted to just touch on it in a bit more depth. We can all argue how much it costs to rear an animal. AHDB say £1,800. I would say that varies greatly on farm. And I would hasten to add, I think sometimes it costs more than that. But I thought this was amazing that the average is 530 days in milk for payback for rearing. And the majority, 70% of that is in the second lactation. You know, it's absolutely essential that we've gone to all the trouble of rearing these heifers that they stay around. If nothing else, they produce more milk in their second and third lactation. I looked at the CIS data, and second and third lactation, they're doing 20 to 22% more in those than they were their first, and their fourth and fifth lactation, 31 and 33%. So you're wanting your animals really to stick around on your farm for 7 years at least. But I think it's going to become more and more important. We're under scrutiny all the time to ensure that we're looking after our animals properly. And I think if we're breeding an animal, we want to make sure that they have the longest life possible. And obviously the environment's going to become more and more important. And again, as we can keep cows longer, better it is for the environment. So my brother said I could use this photograph of his office as long as I didn't tell anybody it was his. So there it is. There's a load of data in there. How often does he look at it? I'm not so sure. Everybody's busy. I would imagine there's quite a lot of dust on those folders. But one of the reasons people don't look in those folders anymore is there is so many different benchmark. You can benchmark yourself against anything, and if you try hard enough, you can probably find something you can benchmark yourself better than anywhere else. I'm saying that slightly tongue-in-cheek. I think you need to decide how you're benchmarking and then stick to it. We do quite a nice report, which is just double-sided A4. This is the production side. And it just basically tracks each part of your production, the number of lactations, so on, possible ketosis, acidosis, and it goes on and on. But it tells you how you rank nationally, whether you're in the middle or the highest 10% in there. But it also tells you your trend, whether your trend on farm is going up or down or staying the same. Going up or down isn't particularly a bad thing, or sorry, going down isn't particularly a bad thing. For argument's sake, on this one here, which is all about the traits of the cow, I know for a fact this farm wanted to try and get their cows a bit smaller in size. So their stature's gone down, but in actual fact, that's a good thing, because that's exactly what they were trying to achieve. It also gives you things like your inbreeding coefficient within the herd. But it's something that you can look at very quickly and see, and then pick out the bits that you want to drill down in, and that's when you can go into depth, because otherwise you could just drown in numbers. I'm a big believer in this. And interestingly, I asked some of my colleagues at work if they knew about Bradley Wiggins and the Tour de France, and no one did. So I started this slide just with a photograph of Bradley, and then decided I ought to put a bit more text on it. But the aggregation of marginal gains is very, very big and it can give massive impact. And basically Brailsford, who was in charge of Team Sky, believed he could improve everything by 1%. If he could find 100 things he could improve by 1%, Britain for the first time could win the Tour de France in 5 years. They won it in 3. Absolutely unbelievable achievement. And it's something you can bring back to your dairy farm. If you can just improve everything just by a small margin, it can have a massive impact. That doesn't mean that you've got to ignore the things that actually can make a big impact on itself, but it's worth bearing in mind. Every small thing makes a difference. So let's just look at the available tools for your future herd. I hear quite often that people say, oh, we don't register our cows because it's too expensive. We don't type classify because it's too expensive. I thought it was quite interesting. For the average cow, it costs £86 if you milk recorded it, type classified it, did Yoni's monitoring, genomic evaluations, registration, and BVD testing. That is a big range of testing to do, £86, when you understand that the top 20% of cows earn on average 5,000 more than the rest of the herd. So let's look at these tools. Well, type classification is the first one. I really like type classification because it gives the opportunity for dairy farmers, herdsmen, to just step back and look at their herd with classifiers and look at the data, basically looking at the cows through fresh eyes. They actually scored 26 traits. There's a couple of research traits going on at the moment, but there's 24 that are well known. Even if you don't type classify, I would urge anybody to download this piece of paper and to wander around the herd and look at the herd and see if there's anything that is an obvious weakness. Because if you've got an obvious weakness there, it's something you can breed very quickly to change. Just if anybody's interested, we're on a run at the moment on our YouTube channel doing trait talk videos where each of the classifiers actually got videos of cows and talk through the traits. It's very interesting. Genomics, our genomic testing is growing massively. We did 46% more in 2020 than we did in 2019. We're doing about 10,000 a month now. But the reason we built this genomics portal is it isn't just growing with Holstein UK. We've got people like CMEX, Cogent, Genus, NMR, all offering genomic testing. And it made it very difficult for our Holstein UK members to compare genomics that were done perhaps with Cogent with some others that he'd done from CMEX. So the genomics portal is every animal within your herd that's had a genomics evaluation, irrespective of whether it's been done with an AI company, a breed society, or whatever. And basically what you've got here is 472 cows that are less than 48 months of age. Very simply, if you were looking at, say, using sex semen and you only wanted to serve 2/3 of those to sexed Holstein semen, then this enables you to find those cows. You can also do this with the type classified cows as well. It's a very similar thing. You pick out the traits that are important to you, up to 20. I've just got 11 on there, I think. And then you're able to just screw down exactly those cows that you want to breed from. And all the time you're going through these traits and changing them, you can see at the top, the cow numbers are going down. So fundamentally, I'm just putting the legs and feet to plus, the mammary to plus, and going up and seeing what that's done to my cow numbers. Getting temperament, because I do like nice cows, moving the type merit. I'm just randomly going through here and changing numbers. But I think what it does, it very strongly shows you how quickly this tool works to find the right next generation for your herd. and a herd that actually will perform better than the one you've got at the moment. And that's what we all want. We all want to progress. Once you made your selection, you can go up and then just export that into Excel or any other list that you want to do. So we looked at the cows that you've got at the moment. What's cows you want next? This is a lovely little tool we've developed, the virtual cow. And what this does, it shows you exactly what those traits mean. So this is teat placement side view, just exactly the same as that piece of paper that I showed you, but it's just a bit more interesting because you can see exactly what happens when those traits move. So 9, that side, very far away, going back to 7. Rump angle, exactly the same deal. 5 is the ideal. Going down to 1, you get the high pins. 9, you go totally the other way. So it's actually a nice tool that you can go and design your own cow. This is the industry standard cow just here. But you might have different system. You might have very small cubicles that requires a different cow to loose yards, for argument's sake. But it gives you a good idea to have a picture in your mind of the ideal cow that you want for your farm. And in my opinion, there's only one ideal cow for you, and that's the one you want, not the one I tell you you should have. So moving on now, we've got to find the other 50% of our future herd, which is the sires. So bull selector, we've got just shy of 6,500 available bulls for sale within the UK, which is mind-blowing. Those are only Holstein and Holstein Friesians, or British Friesians to be fair. So how do you find your 6,500 bulls, which ones will suit your herd? Well, you go on to bull selector, you go to the traits that you're interested in, and you move your criteria. And you can do that in no end of traits. I'm just doing the PLI and the production here. You can go down to your type traits. I'm looking for good type cattle. But also, on top of wanting good type cattle, I don't want my cattle any larger. So I can choose to have sires that will not make the cattle any larger in stature. I find my bulls, so 6,500 has now gone down to 37 very quickly. I choose young genomic bulls, 21. And if I want sex semen, I'm now down to 10 sires out of 6,500. And I think that took about 90 seconds. Again, I need to stress that you need to find the sires that will complement your cows. But it just gives you a sense check here that you can glance over to make sure all of those sires haven't got anything that's going to go against your ideal cow. It also tells you where you can buy them from in Great Britain and Northern Ireland on the right there. They are all genomically tested, as you can see, because that was one of my criteria. So we have our sires, we have our ideal cows. So next thing we've got to do is put them together. So on WebMate, we're now looking at, we're getting back to these linears again here, and it's really important that you understand these linears. So we can move those linears any way we want. This is the industry standard. This is the ideal cow that I showed you a moment ago on virtual cow, but I can custom any list I want, and I can save it and name it to how I want it. I can look to using to ensure I don't have inbreeding, and I can put my priority against type or production. Once I've done that, I can go to the bottom and say, you know what, butterfat's really important to me, or not important at all. These are my 12 cows that I've got here that were born between July and September 2018. And these are the bulls that I want to make them again, the 10 that we picked out from Bull Selector. It allows me here to put the number of straws I have and also add any sires that I might have semen in the tank. So now we've matched them, and it's listed all of my cows with the first 3 choices that I'm able to print out and take out on farm. So in about 15 minutes, I think we've just done a breeding program. The caveat I put on there is what will take you the time is deciding what cow you need and the strengths and weaknesses that you've either got to expand on or eradicate. So the key message is it doesn't matter how good your management is, there's always going to be a limit unless your cattle can live up to it. The genetics influence everything that happens, your production, your health, your welfare, your management, and your type. I honestly believe, and I think it's proven, that poor breeding decisions can make the difference between profit and loss. And they really do snowball. The good news is, if you've got a problem on the farm, a weakness within your cows, it can be cured quite quickly. But you've got to make the positive breeding choices. And you obviously can build on those breeding choices as time goes. So the key message from me is, look at your system, choose the right calving pattern for the farm, assess your strengths and weaknesses in your herd, and set targets. Where do you want to be? And hopefully you might be like Bradley Wiggins, where you can do it in 3 years instead of 5. And most importantly, find tools that make your job easy. Everybody's got too much work on nowadays. Find an easier way of being efficient. It's exactly what you want your cows to be, so do the same yourself. Just a little bit of a punt sales thing. However, in total usual breed society fashion, I'm trying to sell you something for nothing. So anybody under the age of 27 can be a member of HYB free of charge, which is package A over here. And that will give you access to all of those tools that I've just shown you, and an awful lot more. And you'll get the digital version of the journal. If you want a printed version, it's just under £20 a year. And if you want to register some calves, then you can do so for £22.50 a year. You can register up to 5 calves, which would normally cost you £50. Our trustees of the society are absolutely adamant that young people are the future, and therefore we subsidise this side of our membership very heavily. I would suggest very much, if any of you are not HYB members, you sign up for it. And if you're at Harper and we ever get out of this dreadful pandemic, I would really suggest strongly you get in touch with the local club, which is Shropshire. They're a great club. And I think anybody who joins would have great fun with them, and it would open a lot of opportunities, national, international travel, and going to national events. And my last sales pitch is, please come and see us at Dairy Day on the 15th of September. And that's about me, Thomas. I don't know whether anybody's got any questions.
Brilliant, thank you, Sue. I just want to say, to reiterate the HYB point, I'm not from a dairy farm, I'm from a beef and sheep and arable farm, but I joined and it was great to get involved. And I work on a dairy farm more than I work on my own farm these days, normally when I'm at home. So yeah, guys, feel free to pop questions in the chat box, or if you wanted to, like I say, ask them verbally, just pop a message in, and then I can give you permissions to talk. Long question. So we've got someone saying, why do you seem to still place so much emphasis on type traits, were there not proxy for health in the days before we had direct health traits? For example, does it matter what leg or foot angle cows have? Now we have direct trait for lameness. Surely we should select on that trait, not on leg type traits.
No, I disagree. So yes, more traits we get that we can look at is more important, but we've got to understand what causes lameness, and a lot of that is the type traits of an animal. And I must just put out here that without type classification, without those phenotypes, we wouldn't have any traits at all, because that is how the information is collected and that's how it's correlated and analysed. To me, getting rid of weaknesses on type traits means that you, by default, get rid of the health issues you have, such as lameness.
If you wanted to come back on that, feel free to pop another comment in. And whilst we're waiting, got a question come in from Joe asking, are Holstein UK doing any work on finding genetic markers to improve food conservation efficiency? Food conversion efficiency.
So not directly. We are supporting 2 initiatives that are going on at the moment with data. There's a very big project going on in the States. I would live to see a project of that size in the UK. So we're not directly involved, but we're indirectly involved by giving the data from our type classification and production as far as CIS is concerned.
Thank you. Got a couple more coming in. One from Daniel saying, thank you for a great talk. Could I ask how much do you and the society encourage/discourage inbreeding and line breeding, considering many of the best cows and bulls in the breed and foundation cows are built upon inbreeding?
We encourage you to look at it. And I can see Daniel's point of view that there is some great cows with inbreeding in there, but genomics actually makes or compacts the inbreeding danger. You're always going to have a percentage inbreeding. Interestingly, when I did that KPI slide that I did earlier today, I was going through a few farms, and I found one that had 96% of the animals with over 6.5% inbreeding, which I would suggest is pretty high. I think it is a case that you have to look at it and be aware of it and make an informed decision. It's when you don't look at it, you're going to run into trouble.
Thank you. A couple more questions. Would you take into account heritability of traits when selecting for them?
I don't think you particularly have to too much as a farmer, because a lot of that is dealt with on the analyst side as far as heritability. So type merit is a good example. The equations that go on behind that taking into account heritability. If you fully understand it, then, and the amounts of heritability of each trait, then sure, you should take into account any information you can get hold of. But it is taken into account in things like PLI and type merit.
And then someone's asking, how well do you feel that high type merit reflects longevity?
You can have the best type cow in the world. If it doesn't milk, it's not going to last very long, is it? So I think it's the balance. You need the right type so it can have the ability to produce enough milk. I think there's confusion sometimes that high type doesn't mean high production. It's getting both is the key. But even high type and high production is no good if you haven't got high health as well. They're all important. You know, just getting one thing right doesn't mean that the cow is going to be around for a long time.
And then a question on, do you think sexed semen will play a significant part in the future of UK dairy breeding?
Yes. Do you want more than that? I think it's a no-brainer. I think the only thing that I've been embarrassed about as being part of the dairy farm is bull dairy calves, when they've sadly had to be euthanized on farm. I think we need to get away from that. I think we are getting away from that. I think sex semen is a fantastic tool to do that. I also think the genetic gain we will make in the future will be much quicker. To be able to have 100 cows and only need 50 females enables us to also bring another source of income into the farm. I think it's very important.
Now, I knew there was going to be a question which had a complicated word in, so forgive me, Jessica, if I pronounce this wrong. Have there been any specific phenotypic traits that have been linked with milk quality?
Yes and no. So basically you've got the obvious ones like teat length with somatic cell count. You've also got udder depth with somatic cell count, but they're very much all about the more the hygiene side of it than anything else. To my knowledge, we haven't got anything that's around things such as butter fat and protein.
Thanks. So we've got, they just replied saying, okay, thank you there. So question coming in, having just completed a dissertation survey looking into farmers' perceptions of genomic testing, my data seem to show farmers are less willing to make breeding decisions based on data rather than what animals physically look rather than what the animals physically looks like. For example, a great looking calf from the best cow could have a poor genomic results, so that there is a reluctance to sell / breed from this heifer to beef. How can we give farmers confidence to make decisions based on data rather than looks?
Okay, there's two different things there. First of all, you have to look at the reliability of genomics. You know, all genomics is doing is speeding it up. So having a genomic test is equivalent to having a first crop of progeny tested heifers as far as information. I'm old enough to remember that we used to wait for the first proof, the first crop of daughters, and then hopefully it'd be okay by the second crop. Sometimes they crashed and burned. But what it is it's an extra tool in the toolbox. I find it difficult to argue with people that don't want to use genomics because they're using other things quite often. They're using their type classification, they're using production. And I wouldn't push anybody into anybody they're uncomfortable with. I did a talk for, I better not even say where it was, but it was a group of members. And I had one guy stand up and he said, well, I've got 300 cows in my herd and I've been genomically testing everything for 5 years and I don't understand a thing it says. Why should I continue? To which my answer was, well, don't. And I think this is the point here. There's no point doing anything. There's no point milk recording. There's no point type classifying if you're not going to use the data and you don't understand it. I think the thing that surprises me is how many people just buy the semen off the guy that comes down their road that they do every time. And it could be that that person that's selling that semen is very qualified, but it could be that they're not as well. I think it's getting the data and using it to the best. Some people really like using genomic testing and we are seeing it growing. Other people are really not interested. It's not for me to say, it's for me to give the tools to enable them to make the best decisions they can.
Well, thank you. The question coming in saying, you mentioned higher reliability being beneficial, considering US genomic figures, a much higher reliability than AHDB figures. Do you think we should be using those figures instead of, say, PLI? No,
I don't, because there's a reason that the PLI is for the UK, is it's based on UK animals. Your reliability in America is down to volume, but you cannot get away from that. It is based on the conditions that there is in the States, not in the UK. I think it's a little bit like going to the racetrack, isn't it? You can put money on a favourite, it doesn't mean it's going to come in. But what you've got to bear in mind is what the odds are. And that's all reliability is, it's what the odds are. When you have a proven bull, you get a bull like Pixton Shottle, and you know it's going to do what it says on the tin. the reliability is so high because there's so many daughters there. What I would say is that, you know, if you're the sort of person that wants to use the hottest new genomic bull, then probably putting it throughout the herd isn't the best idea if the reliability is low. You know, you need to spread your risks. And I think there's a place for using young genomic bulls with more reliability.
Super. Oh, yeah, done. So that's all the questions we've got in the box. So feel free if anyone's got any last questions they wanted to get in. But if not, then I'd just like to say a big thank you to you, Sue, for giving up your time this evening. I think I talk on behalf of everyone how interesting it's been, and you know, when people think of Holstein UK, you might just think of you know, just the breed society for registrations, but it's so much more than that with all the different services. Oh, there is a question coming in.
I've just seen it. I can answer that one.
To what extent is the UK classification scheme in line with classification schemes around the world, where in the UK there are more excellent cows per year than other countries, with more excellent cows per year than countries with more cows?
Yeah, I would say out of every system that there is, type classification is about the most harmonised there is out there. You're going to get differences. I had the pleasure of hosting the World Holstein Frisian Federation Classifiers Workshop at the Dairy Day 2019, and we actually had 40 countries come along, go out on farms. They all scored the cows on a couple of Shropshire farms. Their scores were then all analysed to see what the difference was and everything, and it was extremely minimal. I think none of you will be old enough to remember David Hewitt. He was my first boss at Holstein UK, and he was head of classification. And he led the world harmonisation of type scores. Those linears we've just looked at are pretty much the same all around the world. I think, in fairness, you're always going to get a little bit of difference. I'm not going to say it's perfect, but it is pretty harmonised.
Brilliant. They're just saying thank you on the end there. So are there any final points? If not, we'll let Sue go and enjoy the rest of her evening, whatever it may be involving. But no, just like thank you, Sue, for your time this evening. You know, you've had really good attendance figures. So thank you very much for that. But no, if that's everything, I think we'll call it a day there. So thank you very much.
No, well, I just want to say thank you for the invite. Thoroughly enjoyed it. The only issue I had is I felt like I had to skim over everything quite quickly. So if there's ever the opportunity in the future to do anything more in depth, or if there's anything that particularly interests you, and also we have just purchased a new HQ just in Telford. We're expanding, doubling the size. So if any of you ever want to visit our HQ and see what we do, you're always more than welcome, as long as there's no COVID around.
No, we can do perhaps another session of these at some point in the new year on something a bit more specific, if that would be of interest to anyone. So we can I'll get in touch and we can sort something out more specific if you like.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Thomas, for the invite, and thank you for all of you for listening to me droning on. I hope there was at least something of interest.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye, everyone.